Hi, everybody. Okay, so welcome all of you here to our event on disinformation. First of all, let me introduce myself first. Some of you might be familiar with me already if you attended our event before. My name is Poi. I'm the founder of The Stories, and thank you so much for joining our event today. As you already know, the event today is about disinformation, and we have already known that disinformation is a problem. Um, Online disinformation, it can be escalated into offline violence. Since in the Rohingya mass genocide that happened before, um, it can be used to manipulate in elections and fuel political activities that are threatening democratic spaces. And also, as we have the COVID-19 pandemic happens, disinformation about the pandemic has also gone beyond the public health reason. It has well racism towards some particular group as well. Like in Thailand, before we had the second wave, a lot of no when we had the second wave, a lot of Burmese were discriminated during during that period of the pandemic, for example. And part of it is because of false and misleading information about them. So this event, we're going to talk about tackling disinformation. And tackling disinformation is not that easy, as this is what we are going to talk, and this is what we are going to talk about today. Yeah, tackling disinformation is not easy. The situation in this region is quite complicated from what we see. And when we say disinformation, in this case, we mean false and misleading information that created with harmful intention. While misinformation is false and misleading information that can be shared, innocently, like without harmful intention. In Southeast Asia, there are many tactics of disinformation from what we have observed. And we have seen the propaganda campaigns or information operation linked to state official, hiring of troll farms, or disinformation being created by influential group or people to manipulate thoughts of people that share the same political or religious view. So those who have tried to provide facts, especially fact by independent media outlets that are critical of the government, they are often subjected to harassment or some form of suppression. Also, government in Southeast Asia, some of you may know about this, they like to respond to disinformation with some law and initiative that are often repressive and put freedom of expression and information at risk, as those laws are often actually brand critical information as disinformation when it's actually just information. Sometimes it's actually just a fact. And this happened while the situation of disinformation doesn't seem to get any better. Yeah. In this event, we have invited VERA Files, MAFINDO, and the Online Citizen to talk about the challenges and need in their work on fact-checking, on verifying information. VERA Files and MAFINDO are fact-checking organizations that are the members of the International Fact-Checking Network, called here as IFCN. Setyaji Eko Nugroho, whom I call him Aji, he is here with us. He's a chairperson of MAFINDO. We got two people from VERA Files. Celine leads Facebook fact-checking at VERA Files, while Miko work is about speech, press briefing, official statement, media interview, or public figures. And despite the work is so important, it's just really sad that we don't have many fact-checking organizations here in the region, and really appreciate that they can share with us about their work today as well as their insight. Also, the Online Citizen. I'm so glad that Terry is here with us today, despite what happened a few days ago. The Online Citizen is an independent new media in Singapore, where press freedom is not really that welcome, as those of you who are in the film might have already noted. I have invited Terry, who is the chief editor of TOC, to share with us about how fact-checking effort by independent media that can be hindered by the suppressions of press freedom. So I hope that he can share with us about his insight. This event is a pre-activities of digital risk, as we would like to build a coalition on fact-checking, which will make a network of those who work on information verification in the future. It would be great if this coalition of civil society can work with social media platform in the future to fill in the gap, to tackle disinformation in the region. So after this introduction, we will have a discussion with the speaker for an hour, as you may see in the agenda already, before we go to the Q&A. So please post any question that you have in the Q&A box, and we will go through it in the Q&A session. The beginning of the discussion will start with MAFINDO and VERA File presentation on how they work, challenges, and the need in their work. I would like to invite Aji to go first. Aji, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ploy. Let me share my screen. I hope everybody can see it clearly.
It's perfect.
Okay. So, yeah, thank you again. So in this time, I would like to talk about MAFINDO and also the fact-checking work in Indonesia. So a bit overview about us. We are the first citizen-led fact-checking organizations in Indonesia. It is a community-based, so we have more than 500 volunteers in 19 cities and supported by a team of professional fact-checkers. And we are already being IFC and civic since 2018. And as independent organizations, we work in the fact-checking and also technology area, the digital education on digital literacy education and critical thinking, opinion building, and also convening. This is two websites that we are managing. The first one is MAFINDO or ID, is our about organization info activities, and the second one is the our fact-checking site is turnbackhawks.id. And this is the scheme, the simple diagram to show how we work in the fact-checking area. So in our office, we have a MAFINDO fact-checkers team. It's around 7 people, and helped by Facebook group is community-based. So we have more than 80,000 members there. So together, we create the database of misinformation of disinformations in our turnbackhawks.id. We create also API called Yudhishthira, so it already interconnect to some other systems. And we publish these articles not only on our websites, but also on our social media channels. We also have a weekly broadcast national radio programs, and also we already have the chatbot on WhatsApp since most Indonesians use WhatsApp. So the questions is how we fact check informations. So the first one is, of course, we first to do the listening. So we'll listen the informations through reporting. Either it is a direct message to us or from the social media, and also the social listenings. And the Facebook group with more than 80,000 members also help us provide insight about the current issues that are spread in the social medias. And we are at the moment also working on creating some tools for digital listenings. So it is like a social network analysis and also helped by artificial intelligence. But it is still on progress. But hopefully it could help us to make a better listening. And the second one is the fact checking itself. Of course, because we are quite small fact checking organizations, most of our activities are done digitally. So we do the social media audits, the photo video forensics, using like a Google, Yandex, Tinai, locations analysis using Google Street View, Yandex, Bing Maps, and others. But if we need some on-site, on-location informations or some expert comments, we are quite fortunate that we have these collaborations. This is called checkfacta.com. This is a collaboration between MAFINDO with the help of with 24 online medias supported by Google and also online medias and journalist associations in Indonesia. So we already started in 2018, and yeah, it's getting better and better. For example, if we need some informations on the ground about something, and then we just ask the media, can you help us about this situation, because we cannot find anything in the digital space. So they will send their journalists, and then the information they got from their journalists will be sent back into the group, and then we can use it together as the source of our fact checking efforts. And we also publish collaboratively in our site. It is called checkfacta.com. So yeah, we also help building the site and also maintaining the IT side of this site. And because we also work very close with the journalists since 2018, we also being part of Google News Lab training network. We train more than 7,000 journalists across the nations about the fact checking and verifications. So we have quite a good connections with the journalists. So sometimes we can ask them directly if we need some kind of informations. So this collaboration works up to now. And because Mafindo is also having quite a lot collaborations with other organizations, we also sometimes we would like to ask the organizations to get us some confirmations or some informations. Like for example, if there is a kind of issues about food and drug issues, and then we usually talk to the Badan POM. Badan POM is like a FDA in Indonesia. And also for election issues, we have collaborations with the General Elections Commissions and also the General Election Supervisory Board to tackle misinformation or disinformation about the elections. So in most cases, yeah, we can tackle most of the case that are running on the social medias. And the third one is, of course, the delivery, because this is the most challenging part. After we got the fact-checking articles and how we would like to deliver our debunk. The first one, of course, from our websites, the turnbackhawk.id. Currently, we run more than 6,000 articles. Yeah, because Indonesia is quite rampant. The misinformation is there. Like the COVID-19 itself, we have almost 1,000 articles about COVID-19 and the vaccine of COVID-19. We also publish our story in our Instagram, so it is set in graphics and sometimes videos, and also in Twitter and also in the Facebook page. We also using the WhatsApp chatbot that I already told you, that using this number, people can connect to us. They can ask anything about information that they would like to verify, whether this is false or true. Even they can also use this chatbot to know the most recent misinformations, like the 5 most recent misinformations or something like that. And this is the broadcasting that also working weekly. So we publish our story also, the debunk on the RRI. It is the National Broadcasting Radio. So it is a nationwide published on air and online weekly, and also with some a private broadcasting company. So we also publish the result on the weekly podcast online. Even the government also, they have their own fact-checking informations, like the Ministry of ICT, and also for specifically for the COVID-19. They also sometimes republish some of our articles, because our database is open. Everybody can just use it. And the next one is the challenge for the fact-checking work. I think the first one is the delivery problem. We see the big discrepancy between number of misinformations and the clarifications. For example, when disinformations can be spread 100,000 times, but the clarifications only can reach 10 or 20%. So still many people believe the misinformations even long after debunk. And because Indonesia has many information silos related to ethnic, religion, intra-religion, political affiliations, so confirmation bias post-truth seems to affect greatly on how people accept the debunk. And the next one is the information that travels from country to country, especially for the Asian context. Like the fake egg, plastic rice misinformation is also spread not only in Indonesia, but coming from Indonesia to other countries, or sometimes from other countries coming to Indonesia. And the most noted is actually some issues like racial religious theme like Myanmar Rohingya issues is already source of fuel of misinformations. Like hate speech to Buddhists in Indonesia because of this misinformation tend to overgeneralize these situations. Like some people in Indonesia think that every Buddhist in Myanmar must be like us in Viratu. And the next one is the some vulnerability to penal law. Since we are not member of press ecosystem, that for press ecosystem, press media, they are protected by press freedom law, but we are not. So we are vulnerable to be subject of UU ITE, is Information Electronic Transactions Law, that can be raised by parties that are not happy with our articles. And the next one is we see that some platforms that don't have already the fact-checking ecosystem yet. While several platforms like Facebook, Instagram, they have already full or partial fact-checking ecosystem, many others is still don't, including emerging platforms like TikTok. And private messaging like WhatsApp, Telegram are being used to disseminate misinformation, and there is no still exact solutions to tackle these problems. Balancing public safety versus freedom of expression in private platform is very challenging. Chatbot can help as long as there is some volunteers to fact check misinformations. So if we have some resource needed, what we can have to improve the fact checking ecosystem. So the first one is I think we need to create like a polyphonic broadcast message. So we need to convey our debunk article to specific target audience using local language with a specific graphic or video formats. And also we need to disseminate the debunk using collaborations with strong base organizations and religious leaders. And the next one is how to combat the misinformation that travels in ASEAN countries. So at the moment, we are using the Fact Check Explorer provided by Google to explore the misinformations from other countries. But I think if we can collaborate together and then we can build an index of misinformations, translating it, and then I think it would be help greatly to increase the response times. And because Asia topics sometimes would be very specific, like misinformation about remedy, about food, about religious topics. So the last one, I would say that fact checking cannot go alone. It should be go together with the educations, literacy, digital literacy, critical thinking, opinion building, working on journalism to improve the journalism, and sometimes law enforcement. But of course, not to suppress the freedom of expressions. I think that's all from me. Thank you, Ploy.
Thank you so much, Aji. I like the index idea actually. Next, can I invite Celine and Miko to talk about the work of VERA Files?
Sure. Thank you, Ploy. And I think you'll see a lot of overlap with what Aji just discussed with the challenges and the suggestions that we have as well. So I'm just going to share my screen. Oops. Okay, there we go. I hope everyone can see the full screen of the presentation. Okay. So hi, I'm Celine, and this is me. Along with me is Miko, and we lead the two fact-checking projects at VERA Files. So VERA Files is a 12-year-old media nonprofit in the Philippines that produces in-depth reports on current issues affecting Filipinos. Our fact-checking initiative started nearly 5 years ago in 2016 as a project of in the journalism class of VeraFile's co-founder and former trustee Yvonne Chua at the University of the Philippines, Diliman. So her students fact-check statements made by candidates for the national elections at the time, and their outputs were published in the VeraFiles website. So post-elections, we expanded the program to cover a wider range of topics and public figures. And in 2017, we became a signatory to the Code of Principles of the International Fact-Checking Network. So Miko currently leads the team that tracks falsehoods, flip-flops, and misleading claims of public figures and public officials. And in 2018, we started a third-party fact-checking partnership with Facebook. So I lead this team, and this team focuses on verifying disinformation that circulates on social media. So how exactly does VERA Files select which claims to fact check? So I'll turn over the mic to Miko.
Hi, everyone. So as was touched on in the earlier presentation by Aji, there are really a lot of disinformation out there. So for us, we follow a three-point criteria to choose which claims we should focus on. So the first one is the claim must be a statement of fact, meaning it's something that can be proven to be true or false, because we do not fact check opinions. Next, the claim must be feasible. So this means the information needed to debunk or provide context to the statement can be sourced from interviews or currently existing public records. Third, the claim must be relevant. So the current social and political landscape in our country is currently filled with so much noise. Hence, we choose to fact check claims that have a substantial effect on the public. So for example, if the claim pertains to information that has to do with a new law, or we don't even have to go very far if it concerns public health, like in the ongoing COVID pandemic. So in verifying content on social media, we also add a fourth criterion, which is virality. So we select online claims that have reached a lot of people. So this may be that it has thousands of shares, or that same piece of content has been uploaded by dozens of social media users. So we look at virality so we don't unnecessarily amplify claims that have a low reach. So all of our fact checks go through a stringent editing process, and each story is a result of a team effort. So each person on the team pitches a fact checkable item, and then after a reporter has drafted the story, it is reviewed by at least one peer reviewer and two top editors before it is published. Okay, so now let's move on to some of the challenges that we've experienced. Next. So there have been a few studies showing that lies do spread faster than the truth. And among them was this 2018 research done by MIT scholars, which found that false news, specifically on Twitter, travels 6 times faster than truthful information, and that falsehoods are 70% more likely to be retweeted than the truth. So the fact that lies spread faster than truthful information is a challenge because fact-checking, as we've experienced, can take a bit of time due to several factors. So for instance, in the Philippines, accessing official data you need to debunk a claim can be difficult because government agencies don't have a standard protocol in handling such requests, or the fact that our FOI policy in the country so far only covers a limited number of agencies. And also because research and verification also takes a bit of time, unlike spreading falsehoods. Next, it is important to note that we are dealing with groups that appear to have made it their business to produce disinformation. So in 2018, we investigated some websites that produced death hoaxes of celebrities. And we saw that they had the same layout and even the same presentation of content. So as you can see here on the right side of the screen, when you open a death hoax link, it takes you to a page that is dominated by ads with very little space dedicated for actual content that in this case is also false. So we discovered that several of them shared codes that generate ads on their websites, suggesting that there was a particular individual or group behind them. And the fellow fact checker that we interviewed for the story said money is obviously a driver for these types of content. And the websites behind this choose this particular type of content because it appeals very easily to emotions and clicks. Um,
Yeah. So thank you, Miko. And then next, another challenge that we are facing is that the things that we fact check, they have become more sophisticated. The disinformation that we deal with, it has become more sophisticated. For example, in 2018, the falsehoods that we encountered um, were often very obviously untrue or fabricated. What we're facing now is a bit trickier. So misinformation and disinformation producers now tend to use a grain of truth in their stories, which makes their falsehoods more believable. For example, we see photos that are taken out of context and are then weaponized to fit a particular propaganda or agenda of the people behind it. We see this in posts that red tag and terrorist tag journalists, human rights workers, and celebrities. So you see that here in the examples here. And related to this, the threat of red tagging as well, it's a very real challenge for people who do critical reporting and even for fact checkers who fact check statements by public figures in the Philippines, but we can discuss this more in our Q&A session later. So other times, true statements are twisted or are given false context. We see this in the form of vlogs perpetuating vaccine hesitancy. So, and another challenge that many of us fact checkers faced during the COVID-19 pandemic is to communicate information that can be difficult to digest firsthand, especially since we are dealing with a lot of scientific jargon, and that the topic is literally evolving every day. So we've had to quickly address misinformation that had to do with potential cures or preventive measures and now vaccines. On our part, at least we've had great success in working with experts who could weigh in on the claims that we were fact checking or verifying. But lastly, another challenge is reaching certain communities that are in too deep into COVID-19 related disinformation or conspiracy theories, because these groups are not circulating their information not always in the public space but in dark social. What we mean by that is closed chat groups or closed public groups. Yeah. So what then is needed to make fact checking work more efficiently? I'll turn over the first part of this to Miko again.
Thank you, Celine. So a lot of fact-checking operations, I think this is pretty common, have small teams, and VERA Files is no exception. But given the volume of disinformation that's out there, I think investing in human resources, meaning having more fact-checkers, is needed. And one way that we're trying to address this is by empowering more people with skills and know-how to fact-check. VERAFILES conducts hands-on trainings and workshops with schools, civil society organizations, and members of the local media across the country. So we also produce learning materials on fact-checking and online verification that are easy to use and are publicly available. But we need continued support in further developing and scaling up these initiatives, as well as our own daily operations.
Another is for us to continue exploring formats through which we present our fact checks. It's something very similar to what Aji discussed earlier. So the primary goal, of course, for our reporting is to communicate factual information because we want the public to make informed choices so that they can meaningfully participate in a democracy. But to do this, we have to make sure that we communicate it in a way that is understandable, that is digestible for readers, and communicate this to the spaces where the public actually are. So, for example, we've been exploring producing more social media cards that are friendly for Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And we also recently revived our YouTube channel, where we have been using it to publish our fact checks and fact sheets in video format. There are also many other ways in which fact checkers around the world are trying to explore how to communicate their fact checks to their audiences or even underserved audiences. One rising format of which is podcasting. But to be able to do this, again, we would need support to build our capacity to produce these visuals and audio heavy outputs, and explore or afford technologies that help us achieve this.
Another avenue in which fact checkers can be supported is to help them expand their reach by translating fact checks into more local languages. I think this is particularly applicable for a lot of Southeast Asian languages, including the Philippines. So currently, we do translate some of our fact checks in Filipino, but not all. And recently, we've noticed there's growing interest in our Filipino fact checks from our readers. So, for instance, among our most read stories in the past 6 months or so is a fact sheet we did in Filipino about the dangers of red tagging.
And last year, we also got a grant from YouTube via the Google News Initiative to produce a 6-part video fact-checking tutorial series. And their support enabled us to reach and teach fact-checking to more people, even outside of the hands-on workshops that Miko mentioned earlier. And we were able to scale these videos in English and Filipino, which are widely used in the Philippines, languages widely used in the Philippines, but also two other major languages in the Philippines, which is Cebuano and Ilocano. So this concludes our presentation, and we look forward to discussing more in our Q&A session later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. That's a really great presentation. Thank you so much. I want to ask Terry. So you saw from the two organizations about how they fact check, and I just wanted to ask so what are the situation in Singapore about particular about disinformation and particularly about disinformation regarding the COVID-19? You're muted.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Give me a while. I'll try it. So your question is what's the situation of disinformation here in Singapore? Yeah. First, thank you for inviting me for this event. And also thank you the other speakers for speaking, those who spoke before me for sharing their insights on and experience in combating disinformation. It is really an eye opener because here in Singapore, it is the same thing as what been highlighted, that people don't really read fact checking articles as what they do for disinformation. So frankly, it becomes it is important, but at the same time, it becomes a question of like who funds or who supports fact checking. And in the first place, people disseminate disinformation for definitely interest gain. Of course, there are also people who would like to see the world burn, but most of them people just want to gain profit from spreading this information. So coming back to Singapore, as compared to other countries, say Philippines, Myanmar, Indonesia, I think in Singapore, the situation of disinformation is largely controlled. One reason is because Singapore is really small, and also well connected. So like in the case, if a video were to go viral on a false claim, people could easily recognize through the background, the landscape, to know that, oh, this is not in Singapore. This is actually somewhere else. Whereas say, and also when was this actually the event took place? But say somewhere in Philippines, Indonesia, I think the landscape might be a bit similar and a bit hard for people to know whether or not this actually really happened here. And because it's so recognizable, it's easy for us to just do a double check, calling out a friend who happened to live in that location, because Singapore is like only 64 kilometers square, I believe. Yeah, so it's that small. And even if say you don't have a friend living there, you could easily go onto social media platform such as Twitter, Facebook, and you do type in the keyword. I give you an example. There was a couple years back, there was a fake image of a public housing roof that collapsed, and people started sharing on social media platform. But the thing is, given that image was so startling, and even if really that really happened, people living around the area would have took photos of the event and shared online. So the fact that there wasn't any other photos of that particular event would have raised alarm bell that this was a doctored image. And true enough, a while later, which is on the same day, news checked with the housing board and also sent people down to where that place was supposed to be, and verified that there was actually a doctored image. So in Singapore context, it's by and large not that serious of a matter, and most of the time we would be easily any disinformation would be easily rectified within a day or so, especially when the government intervenes while making public announcements. Yes, yeah. And
sorry.
I don't know. And the thing is, I was thinking about this thing about disinformation. I'll say that sometimes when it comes to disinformation, there are also you have to differentiate like disinformation, like with bad intent, But then you also have some cases where information just be not that accurate. So I give you an example, which is the wearing of face masks. Because we are touching on COVID, isn't it? So on the matter of face masks, at the very beginning, you have people, members of the public, who are very concerned that, is COVID that serious? Should we be more concerned about this particular virus? Should we wear face masks to protect ourselves? And then you have the government coming up and say, no, you don't have to wear face masks if you're not sick. Only wear face masks if you're sick. In order to preserve enough masks for the healthcare service provider. And true enough, a couple of months later, the government retracted on their stance and said, oh, actually, you have to wear face masks. In fact, now it's legal if you're not wearing face masks. So, I would say sometimes it's not disinformation in terms of the fake news, but also inaccurate information, where the media, the fact checkers will have to come in and help, because it is a matter of public interest. And in this case, it's healthcare.
So
Yes.
I wanted to ask, because I'm worried about press freedom in Singapore, actually. So based on the situation in Singapore, where press freedom is not really welcome. So for
Yes.
example, if we want to have an organization like MAFINDO and VERA Files in terms of fact checking, would that be possible?
Okay, so the first challenge, right? I think the first, putting aside legal issues, right? I think the first issue is, how is such an organization sustainable? Because it's not just like operating a blog, putting there and then allowing people to just post it up. And in fact, that's actually what we are doing at this moment, because running a news outlet is not cheap. It's not cheap. So to run an organization solely on fact checking, it's unsustainable. You will have to actually operate based on some funds, foundations, etc. In Singapore, it is illegal for us to obtain any funds from foundation outside Singapore. And the dilemma here is, if you're actually a foundation here in Singapore, you'll be very unlikely to be contributing to an independent outlet like us. Yeah. So that is the first challenge. The other challenge is the government is actually not the Singapore government is not as transparent with data on matters as much as we like. There's no law on data transparency, information freedom, to say. So that is another issue. Then the third issue, I would suppose, is because you have to be an accredited media outlet in order to obtain immediate response from the government. You're talking about in hours. Like what we experience is that if you were to send query, most likely we get 3 or 4 days later. And when they reply, they will reply saying that, the information is maybe private or is restricted. Therefore, you don't have any access to this information. That's the 3 challenges that I face, other than all the legal prosecutions and etc. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Yes.
Do you think that so we know about POFMA, right? The
Yes.
protection
Prevention. Yeah.
Protection from Falsehoods and Online Manipulation Act. So since it has been adopted since October in 2019, do you think that POFMA failed to tackle disinformation in Singapore, particularly on the COVID-19?
The thing funny about POFMA is that it creates a dilemma for the government. Why do I say a dilemma? Because people are being sold this idea that with POFMA, fake news can be fought. The government can then take action on fake news. But the thing is, doesn't mean that every fake news out there will be issued a POFMA. That's the ideal situation where people would read a fake news and expect a POFMA order to be issued on the day itself or very soon after. But if there's no POFMA order being issued, right, then you have this mindset thinking, hey, since the government is not taking any action by issuing a POFMA, doesn't mean that it's true. because that's what a common, I think, a common reader would then think that, oh, this law is meant to fight the fake news, but then this fake news that I'm reading, someone is saying that it's fake, but the government is not saying anything that this is fake. So it puts a it creates a situation where lazy reader would just rely on the government to say that, okay, this is the fake news, and really it makes them lazy not to refer to various sources of information, such as the let's say fact checker database or the news outlet, to really see whether or not, to see for themselves, to read for themselves that this is indeed true or not.
Okay.
On
Thank
this
you.
is on POMA, yes.
Yeah,
And,
thank you.
and another thing about POMA is that, you know, going back to the this inaccurate information of the wearing of masks. So there were 4 doctors who came out and then say that, oh, there's a need to wear masks. There's a need to actually wear masks. And the issue, and they were proven correctly subsequently. The issue here that most citizens in Singapore actually face is that if I were to come out and say something that is contrary to what the government is saying, or might be detrimental to the reputation of the certain ministers or ministries or etc., they are concerned that the POMA can be used against them, even though they are of good mindset. Of course, there are some caveat in the law that basically says, oh, if you are not aware that this news is actually fake, as in this information is not fake, you will not be subjected to the, let's say, jail, imprisonment or fine. But then you still will be issued, you still can be issued with a correction direction or a takedown direction, and people are scared being named by the government. So that creates a scenario where people are fearful to come out to voice on issues, whether or not at this point is proven to be a fact or is a falsehood.
I see.
Hmm.
Thank you very much. Can you hear from the Philippines and Indonesia too? Can you hear from MAFINDO and VERA Files too about the government effort to tackle disinformation? So what's really happened in the Philippines?
Yeah, so in the Philippines, there's currently no law that specifically tackles disinformation, or what the government often refers to as fake news. However, in a law that was passed last year to address the COVID-19 pandemic, they included a provision penalizing those who spread online false information about the pandemic that they said were clearly geared to promote chaos or panic. So the law was only in effect for about like 3 months. And when I interviewed a police officer for a story that I was doing at the time, to see how the number of cases, if the number of cases have increased or decreased after the law was passed, he told me that the amount of disinformation cases that they monitored actually increased as the pandemic progressed, even with this new fake false information provision, because even if the law has already expired, the cases that they flag tend to violate other related laws, like online libel, for example. And he said there was also an increase in reporting because a lot of people were able to physically report to their office due to ease travel restrictions. But the false news provision itself has a number of issues, and that includes there being no transparency or not much transparency about the cases. So we don't know how law enforcement agencies determine which claims to flag or what accounts to monitor, and even how they determine if that particular claim is true or false. So that's not information that's available to the public. And it also does not recognize the fact that this information also comes from public figures, including government officials, with no less than the president himself, President Duterte, spreading wrong and misleading information about the pandemic. And the past months during the pandemic, the government has also been criticized for supposedly silencing critical comments by regular citizens on social media, using the COVID-19 pandemic as justification. So for instance, and there were a lot of these types of arrests that happened. There was a salesman in a southern province in the Philippines who was reportedly arrested by police during the early months of the pandemic because he supposedly called Duterte a crazy man on social media. And of course, also with the enactment of the anti-terrorism law last year, there's also an added risk to critical reporting and fact-checking, because debunking statements of government officials might be construed as undermining the government and therefore a terrorist act. So the law is actually currently being contested before the Supreme Court with at least 37 petitions, including one that was co-filed by VERA Files. But yeah.
What about Indonesia, Aji?
Yeah. So when we talk about the government, so it is not like a uniform, like a single entity, right? So we have like a good guy and also some bad guys there. So for example, we still have some public officials that still spread the misinformation, false informations like about COVID-19 and other areas. But we also appreciate that there are also some efforts from the government to tackle misinformations. Like the first one is the fact-checking outlet. I mean that I think not many countries that the government publish specific fact-checking informations. Of course, some people would object that this is a way that the country would like to take narrations to force narrations to the people. Yeah, people can argue that, but in my opinion, I think still a lot of good fact-checking articles coming from the government fact-checking websites. The second one is the government efforts on digital literacy. So I think this is also going quite fast now. The Ministry of ICT, the Ministry of Education is now working more to work in the media literacy and critical thinking, and they also engage the civil society organizations like us in the movement. So now it is rolling together. So, and the third one is of course the law enforcement. Now, in this case, we have already the law to tackle the misinformation. Of course, it is not like as ideal as we want, because sometimes it is not exactly because it is already formulated before the phenomenon of misinformation happened in Indonesia. So many cases still missing. But of course, we are quite afraid that if the use of this law is actually could harm the freedom of expressions. But the good news is that last month the Indonesian police issues specific order that this specific law should be used for the last resort. I mean, the concept of restorative justice, the pressure from civil organizations to put the mediation first, to put educations, to preventions, it is now being accepted. So I mean, the law should be used only for specific for actor, for people that create some kind of trouble, that do harm and something like that. So I think despite there is still, of course, a lot of criticism, I think I would like to appreciate this movement for directing the law enforcement to the concept of restorative justice. So for specifically like tackling the misinformation of COVID-19, the people in the government, in the Ministry of ICT and also the Ministry of Health, they're working together and they invite us to join in the group. And then, yeah, we are open to criticize if there is information that confuse people, something like that. So I think in some case, there is quite a good directions. Whether in other case, I think, yeah, we still have some kind of government officials that still spreading even conspiracy theories as well. So I think that's some insight from Indonesia.
Thank you very much. Next, can I invite all the speakers to join the open discussion on the role of social media platform on tackling disinformation? So can I ask all of the speakers to turn on their mic right now? So I just wanted to have a discussion with you guys about what are your view on the effort of social media platform like Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube in tackling disinformation in your country? Yeah.
Yep. So for the Philippines, currently the one actively working with fact checkers is Facebook. YouTube indirectly, and Twitter, no, we haven't had any talks with them yet. With Facebook, at least, there is a tangible consequence for the people that publish misinformation and disinformation. For example, they get a label, the distribution of the page and the domain is reduced, and if they are a repeat offender, they could lose their ability to monetize or to advertise on the platform. But common criticism for Facebook or common misconception with the program is that it's a silver bullet, which it is not. I mean, it's one of the ways that we can address misinformation. And Facebook is often criticized for their policy to not fact check politicians. And this is something that we continuously raise with Facebook. Fortunately for VERA Files, at least, we're able to fact check politicians because we have a separate project that focuses on that. On YouTube, YouTube is a rising platform for disinformation in the Philippines. For example, in the third quarter actually of 2020, YouTube overtook Facebook as the leading platform that internet users in the Philippines use. And we've seen some channels that spread disinformation get a verified mark on YouTube, which is very problematic. But YouTube has rolled out its own fact-checking sort of program, at least in some countries. For example, they surface some fact-check articles in the search results in a limited number of countries, but this doesn't happen in the Philippines. I don't think it's happening in a lot of countries in Asia. So that's an opportunity that we can further talk about. But generally speaking, social media platforms need more stringent policies to address misinformation, since their channels, it has inevitably become sources where people get their information from. And um, running parallel to this, it has also been used as a medium through which people spread hate and disinformation. So if they want to involve third-party fact-checking partners in this process, I think this would be a very good opportunity, and fact-checkers would be welcoming of the idea.
Do you also work with YouTube?
YouTube, right now it's not very direct. Like we know that some of our fact checks might be surfacing in the countries where their fact checking program is rolled out, but in the Philippines that is not happening.
I see. I see. Well, what about Indonesia, Aji?
Yeah, same with Celine. We also being part of a third party of a fact-checking network on Facebook already because we are signatory of ICN. And also we already have a collaboration with WhatsApp. So we launched the chatbot for WhatsApp, helping people that would like to ask whether this information is false or true. And since December last year, we already start collaborations with the YouTube, so that if people search something in the YouTube, and if the result might be get to the videos of misinformations, and they will get some alternative informations that this information is fact checked, something like that. So I think this is a good progress with the YouTube and also Instagram, because Instagram is part of Facebook also. I think this we see at the beginning of the fact checking on Instagram platforms. Twitter, yeah, we have already talked with Twitter, but because of, I think Twitter still don't have a specific platform like Facebook has. So yeah, we still don't really do the fact checking on the Twitter. But Indonesian people now are a lot using the TikTok, and also Clubhouse is very popular now, and we still don't see anything about the fact checking efforts there.
I see. What do you think that the effort of the social media platform can be improved, given like a lot of criticism that are facing right now?
Well, in my case, I think what we would like to suggest is, for example, when we create like we in Indonesia we already successfully built like an index created by MAFINDO and also with 24 online media in checkfakta.com. We hope that Facebook could like create like a AI that can search information by AI to connect to our database. For example, if they found information in public domain that might be related to misinformation, then they don't need to wait the manual flag from the fact checkers, because at the moment when we would like to flag, we have to do it manually. So I think there are some space that artificial technology could work using the current database that we have. And if the index could be enlarged in the Southeast Asia context, I think it would be very helpful also to help other countries. For example, if misinformation already debunked in Philippines and it spread in Myanmar, but the fact checker in Myanmar don't really have the fact checker articles, yes, this article from Philippines can be useful, can be used by the people in Myanmar. So I think that's the area that we can improve, Ploy.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's also about the issues of transparency as well, that I think that social media platform, that they are facing. Like there's actually news article that say that like when Facebook remove or like censor some posts, there has to be some kind of like a more transparency in terms of like what post is that. Yeah, what do you think about it?
Yeah. So this is actually an issue that we dealt with last year, because Facebook took down some accounts that were
Yeah.
related to the military for coordinated inauthentic behavior. But
Mhm.
again, there's a misconception, and people are raising it again. Even people from the government are raising, like, why did we select VERA Files to become a fact checker, or the other fact checking organizations, for Facebook to be a partner to fact check. Um, but there needs to be transparency from Facebook, or like to be more proactive in explaining that what happened was not related to the fact checking program. Oh, um, sorry about that. um, but the where was I? Oh yeah, but they really make it clear that the coordinated inauthentic behavior, it doesn't have to do with content. It has to do with the coordination behind the accounts, the public, behind the accounts. But fact checkers receive the brunt of the criticism because they think it was us that caused the taking down of those accounts.
Mm.
Yeah, I agree with Celine. I think because many social media users actually don't really know how the fact checking works in the Facebook, for example. So when there is a kind of content that being flagged by and then they will attack the us. I mean that they will try to hunt us, and sometimes there is kind of phenomenon like a doxing happens in Indonesia, like some fact checkers the private information are published on the social medias. So I think it is very good if social media platforms can also have more contents to educate people on about the misinformations and how the fact-checking ecosystem works. So that so we are not only being the target from these people.
Mhm. I want to ask Miko about this actually, since like you work with public figure. I think that there are some public figures that are known to spread disinformation in the Philippines, like repeatedly, like it's their habit. So like the work of Facebook, or if they're on any other social media platform as well, have these public figure been flagged for their habit?
Here in the Philippines, no. In the terms of our partnership with Facebook as third-party fact checkers, there's a limitation of not being able to fact check politicians. I think it's specifically for those who are elected or those who are currently running in an election. But correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, as Eileen mentioned, we tried to go around this by just publishing it on our websites anyway. But the thing is, I think this is a space that can actually that deserves more conversation at least, because a lot of these, especially now during the pandemic, a lot of these claims, a lot of the things that we fact check coming from public figures are also circulated on social media platforms, specifically Facebook, because it's one of the most used platforms here in the Philippines. And I think there needs to be more, there needs to be at least even if it's just a label or some accompanying fact check article on these types of claims, because there's also the consideration that some of these claims are said during long briefings or speeches in which there are information that what the public needs to know. But yeah, I think currently now with the way that's happening, that there's really no way to involve the platforms in fact checking, specifically politicians. It's a space that deserves more conversation, and it's a space that needs to have more attention from social media platforms, and not just in markets that are because we see these kinds of actions happening in, for example, in the United States, but also in markets in Southeast Asia, including the Philippines, where a lot of disinformation also spreads using these same platforms.
I see. And you both of you mentioned all of you mentioned about like the challenge in terms of fact checking on closed messaging group messaging platform, for example. Yeah, I just wonder like has there been any effort like so far on that by the social media company like Facebook or WhatsApp, uh any other messaging apps?
You know, the funny thing is, I think most of this information, right? It's in the close it's the close messaging groups. You're talking about like WhatsApp, Telegram, Signal, because these are platforms in which this is mine. These are platforms in which that no one could feedback, because people just choose to share forward, and then people just read and then take it as. However, right, if you're looking at, say, if this information was coming from Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you would have people right-minded people noting that, is it really true? Is this right? Or they would actually share the link to maybe the fact-checking portal to say that this is actually wrong. So you have comments actually feedbacking. Is the problem comes when it is actually the close messaging platform. But at the same time, it's an operational dilemma for the Facebook companies like Facebook, Twitter, because Facebook messaging, WhatsApp especially, because the promise that the company has is that all this messaging or the data of this messaging and who they converse is, right, all these are private. So from their side, right, they cannot intervene in terms of scanning through the message, knowing that this is a disinformation being shared. But of course, what they could do is, from a technical point of view, they could say, oh, this message has been shared many times, and then warn people that this may be, or yeah, basically they couldn't do that, because I cannot think of any way that you can circumvent the privacy and then do the fact checking. Going back to how do I pronounce name, Mr. Spatiaji, right? Yes. I believe the Facebook does use AI. Like in Singapore, they use they do monitor all this posts that has mention of COVID-19. So whenever they have an article that has COVID-19, they would point, say, this is a news that's on COVID-19. Be wary of like sharing, and then they'll point you to a certain place where you could get the most updated info. In Singapore, there's moh.gov. And I believe Facebook also work with AFP as their local fact checker. However, I know I think the issue here is that in Asia, I think that the difficulty that social media platform has is the diversity of language here in Singapore, and also the culture. And it's easy in Europe in America where the language is pretty much standardized. But here, right, in terms of cultural, in terms of context, I think the AI, as much they can, as much as they like, if there's a limit, I believe they have to work with the local fact checkers to assist in terms of like spotting what are the trending disinformation. And one thing that's also lacking in Asia is something similar to Snoops. You know, in America, Europe, everything that you see, whenever you see something that is too weird to believe in or something, you would first thing that you goes to your mind is to go to Snoops and see whether has there been any fact checking done on this thing. Whereas in Asia, there doesn't seem to be something similar. Of course, I believe in Indonesia, you have that Indonesian fact checking platform. However, but for the social media platform, right, I think it's easier you would have something there's a consolidated version, and which is why I believe, right, social media platforms should hold a responsibility to fund it if there will be such a venture to fund this, and along with their contributors, meaning, for example, the Indonesian fact checkers, the Philippine fact checkers, and so on and so forth. Because as I said from the beginning, who's going to fund this? You can't rely on a foundation. And the social media platforms are the one who actually profit from all this in the first place. So they should actually be responsible in assisting the organization to ensure that disinformation does not persist in the region. Yes, I think that's a point.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that WhatsApp has like has a function to limit the forwarding of the message to 5 people. Yeah, and actually that's one good thing compared to other messaging platform. What I'm worried is that you guys know about the rising popularity, the rising popularity of Telegram and Clubhouse. Yeah, and I just want to ask you about this because I think that people are really enjoying it without thinking about the consequences of what these two apps can happen. Like, I think that Telegram has a lot of downloads since WhatsApp announcement that they're gonna change the privacy policy. And I have observed it so far, like in the channel of Telegram, it's allowed like 200 people in one group, while the channel function in Telegram, it's allowed unlimited audiences. And for me, I feel like it can be used to spread conspiracy theory as well, as even though the app is really popular among the pro-democracy movement. Yeah, it's like you trying to fit like 200,000 people in a stadium and then, talk on a microphone on that, in their ears. Yeah, something like that. And why Clubhouse? I think that the policy, because the app is still in the beta function, the policy on hate speech and disinformation is still not clear yet. And what do you think about it? And I actually, since the Philippine election is going to happen next year, I think that you should be monitoring these two apps as well about what is going to happen there in that platform. It might create it like a new narrative on that. Yeah, so what do you think about it?
Yeah, so going into dark social or private groups, chat groups is something that has been a struggle for us, because really, how do you monitor something that is circulating in the private space? How are we going to enter it? But we are aware. My Bixby keeps on updating. I'm sorry. Well, we are aware of at least one disinformation channel using Telegram. She has, like, yesterday I checked, it has about 1,200 people in it, and she is someone that we fact check regularly on Facebook. I know that she also used Parler, but I'm not sure how Parler was affected by the U.S. Capitol riots, because I know it was taken down.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was taken down from the App Store and Google Play Store, and then it was removed from Amazon's cloud provider. So according to a Washington Post article, it disappeared from the internet. But anyway, she's using Telegram now. And the same things that she is posting on Facebook are the same things that she is posting on Telegram. And people still interact with it. And it has to do a lot with vaccine hesitancy, or that this is a pandemic and not a pandemic. So yeah, that's one problem. We're not clear about what exactly is the misinformation policy is on Telegram. And about Clubhouse, what I can say about Clubhouse is that the Philippines is highly an Android country. So I look at the stats, like over 80% of people use Android, and people use Apple, 13% only of the population. So, and yeah, and Clubhouse is an Apple centric, is an Apple only app. But I do see the danger in Clubhouse, because even though they have a policy that they say we are not allowing false, I'm going to read it, you may not spread false information or spam, or artificially amplify or suppress information. Um, the problem is, though, when people say something that is false, it's not recorded. You can't go back to the statement and seek accountability from the person that is making the false statement. And what I see the danger is, with Clubhouse, because here, right, you don't have posts. You just have like rooms where you can listen in on conversations of other people. um, the challenge that I see, the danger that I see is, when people are listening to I mean, it's free speech, but when people listen in on the conversation, their fears or their misconception, um, might grow, might be affirmed by what they are listening to. And we're not sure how the people speaking, the main speakers, can be held accountable. So I think that's a space that can be improved.
Yeah. Have you found something on Telegram, Aji?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. As you already talked that many people are moving from WhatsApp to Telegram because of the last issues, and yeah, Telegram provide quite space and more flexible and more private, and then and it is yeah, it makes quite pain, yeah, for fact checkers, because sometimes we cannot easily find any informations there. I mean that not every group are public, but we found also some public groups that spread misinformation about the COVID-19 and something like that. Still, we still don't have any exact solutions on dealing with this. I mean that how to deal with in the messaging platform effectively. I mean, what we need to think is that actually to get some people inside the group to be like an agent of change, like to be more aware about how to fact check informations, and they can hopefully that if this agent is growing through media literacy program, through critical thinking program, and then it is like a bottom-up approach, which is of course we need quite sometimes, yeah, to improve the level of the critical thinking and also the digital literacy of the people. But yeah, I think yeah, we have to do it anyway. I mean that learning from other countries, now we also try to create a fun way to study the digital literacy, so that people would like to eager to understand how to when they found a message from the WhatsApp group, Telegram group, and then they can understand how to fact check voluntarily. Because the problem is that we cannot enforce anything, in this platform. But of course, if we can get the Telegram or the new platform like Clubhouse on board, talking about this and discussing about the potential solutions, I think it will be very, very helpful. Because I think for Telegram, like Telegram, we still don't have anything discussion about this. So I think it's quite a gap that we need to fill. So that's my opinion, Ploy.
I think, yeah, that's great. Thank you, Aji. Do you have anything to add, Terry?
Sorry, on the Telegram, right?
Yeah, Telegram and
Yes,
Clubhouse.
yes. Such I know again it's about balancing between freedom of speech and then prevention of people misusing it for disinformation. I'm of the view that actually Telegram there you know there should be a cap in terms of how many people a group could have for unverified accounts, because the thing is because how can it be that any account could actually any group could have like 200,000 or 20,000 odd subscribers, and then you can just blast out to everyone? It ought to be right account which can be held accountable when you make such dissemination, because in the first place, right, if this is just an interest group, then you should be okay to actually just have like 500 odd or something. But if you're a news publication, you have authentication with the Telegram channel, and or which platform are you publishing from, right? Example would be like the Facebook blue tick. So once you have this verification, then you'll be allowed to open up for more subscribers. Instead of the current practice, which anyone could just open a group and then invite people in. I think it's the policy issue of the social media platforms that with great powers come great responsibility. So you would have to, if people do not have to take up the responsibility, then their access should be, I think, limited. So as to control the issue of this information, because basically we cannot have a society where the digitalization of the country, right, it helps in destabilizing it. It cannot be. It must be a equal process of that. That's my view on that Telegram part.
Yeah, I like the idea of verification actually. Yeah, that's a really good point. Anything else that you guys would like to raise? No? Okay, so let's move to the Q&A. Okay, start with Christiana. Fact news about vaccine COVID-19 from Indonesia media.
I can answer that.
Okay. How can we
So,
counter misinformation? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Aji. Go ahead.
yeah, sure. I think this is the issues that actually already published in our fact-checking websites just 3 days ago. So I think this is about the videos from broadcasting televisions that have like interview with a professor from Surabaya, a big university in Indonesia, Universitas Airlangga, that said that it is actually old information that claims COVID-19 vaccine could lead to antibody dependent enhancements, ADE, that could be dangerous, like we see in the dengue vaccines, yeah, like dengue vax or something like that, the name. But it was old concern actually, because after the vaccines being tested and also being rolled to the people, there is no proof that the COVID-19 vaccines could lead to antibody-dependent enhancement. So yeah, unfortunately, this article is in Indonesian, but hopefully you can try to translate it, because we also include some references there. You can find whether we should do. But I hope this specific theme is that actually you asked, Christina, because in Indonesia we already collecting more than 100 topics on COVID-19 vaccines, misinformations, and more than 20% are related to safety. So this is one of them. So that's my answer. Thank you.
That's one of the problem that we have with the current climate of disinformation. A fake news from a particular country can be translated and then well spread in another country because you have the screenshot, you have the image, and things can be taken out of context. And which is why again I would strongly suggest a regional like centric fact checking where the languages will be translated. So people can refer to, because you have currently Aji has that fact checking page, but it's Indonesian. Timor Leste, I believe, not all actually read Indonesian. So if the fake news was be translated into let me see, Portuguese, most people would not know to actually look for an individual Indonesian version of that fact checking. Yeah.
I see. Is there any other question? I think I see.
Yes.
I see. Okay, I see this question in the chat box. On what ground and circumstances the regional fact-checking can take place and on which project to be realistic? Do you guys have any answer on that?
I think organizations where Celine and AG has coming from is already well established. It's just about whether or not is there an organization that has the capacity to gather the information, because they are already having their hands tied with so much work on the fact checking. Someone has to be the one consolidating the information. But again, that's where why social media platforms should come in and ask, can we help? Can we help in anything? Because they are the one who are having the resources. You cannot be asking the citizens who are subjected to disinformation to do it on their own.
I think Ploy should answer it actually. She's the best person actually to.
I have a lot of ideas in my head right now, but it's just like, thinking out loud. Yeah, I think that I need to study more about other example in other country, in other region as well, about what they do. But I think that, the importance of having it is that I think that you guys need resources in order for fact checking, yeah, and like training. And I see that now me from Innovation for Change having a training program right now, so you guys can check it out. Yeah, so there has to be like capacity building some sorts of some sorts, and also like I really like the ideas of index that Aji post. I think that is really good. I think that I need some time to think about like what can really happen. Yeah, but I think that is really necessary in terms of the regional fact checking. Yeah, and also I think that it's gonna be like a good opportunity, like in terms of like respond to the harassment, in terms of like when we act as a coalition, like the weight in terms of like how you call it, resistant, it's actually like heavier. Yeah. Yep.
And just to add to that, to the regional fact checking, because similar to AGI, but in the Philippines, we also had a collaborative fact checking project during the 2019 midterm elections. So it was with 11 media organizations and 3 universities in the Philippines. But what was important for that partnership to work was to have a secretariat that was sort of like a middle ground or a neutral ground for everybody. Because I mean, we can't deny that media organizations tend to be competitive, but for them to work together, there needs to be a strong neutral ground that would serve as the secretariat. Yeah.
Yeah, the secretariat is a really important structure, like holding them together. Yeah, that's really is necessary to make it happen. Yeah. We have about 7 minutes left. Anything else that you want to rest before we say bye? Anything else? Otherwise, we will end early. Any more question? Oh, okay. More question. Who should lead fact checking, the government or an independent party?
Yeah, I want to just like share a few thoughts on this. I think while it is important for the government and government agencies to be aware that this information is a problem and it's something that should be given proper attention to, especially in the context of a public health crisis, the pandemic. But perhaps this is bias already. I think it should the role of independent fact checkers should really be stressed here, because the key is independence. When government agencies tend to do their own fact checking, there's always that layer of are you really looking at all of the claims that are out there that are potentially harmful or potentially disinformation? And you always question what are the, what are the mechanisms in place, and how do they do monitoring? Does it ponder into surveillance, or things like that? These are really important considerations, especially in the context of in the Philippine situation. And also, when you think about it in the context that there are a lot of public officials that are repeatedly spreading disinformation or misinformation, and there's always and if whether it's intentional or not, there's an added harm to that, specifically because of the platform that they carry. So if they do spread, it's hard to let government be the one arbiter of truth, especially when it's very much tied to whatever interest that that they may have.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah, I
anyone?
agree with Miko, I guess, because I think, I mean, the independent media, the independent organization should thrive in these situations. But of course, we could expect also the government. For example, Indonesia, I think we appreciate the way the government try to do the fact-checking efforts. Even sometimes they collaborate with us. But of course, there is some potential of conflict of interest when some statements coming from public officials, and maybe some ministry would like to afraid, they have to be afraid, to fact check those, like when the ministry says something or even the president said something. So yeah, I think, yeah, we don't need to choose. Let the people choose. Let the people choose. I mean that we do our parts, the independent media doing parts, the government do it parts, and then yeah, let educate the people, and then yeah, they choose the better informations.
That's a good answer. Thank you. Last question. As most have been repressive, do you have ideas for state policy recommendation that respect free expression and privacy? Ah, this is this is quite challenging.
It's going to be long, long talk about this. Yeah.
Another event.
Yeah, it's a challenging question.
I think when the state have a policy, I mean, there actually like no clear cut about like not having a law to tackle disinformation and having a law to tackle disinformation. But the problem is that when they love responding with disinformation with the law, often that those laws have been used against like those individuals that working like journalists or critics of the government is usually like used against the information that is critical of the government. So that's why it's really problematic. Their initiative as well. Yeah. So policy recommendation. Of course, it has to be something that respect free expression and privacy, but free expression and information and also privacy. There's another issues about this is whether they will listen. Yeah, because I think that in terms of policy advocacy, a lot of organization has been talking about, hey, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't like threaten freedom of expression by imposing those law, and it's really bad. But then the narrative that we have so far is that they have never listened, and it's like the more I feel like the more of these law have been used, it doesn't really solve any issues about disinformation and misinformation at all. It seems like it's getting even more and more escalate, and sometimes the state is also the actor of that misinformation and disinformation as well. Yeah, so that's what I'm really thinking. Do you guys have anything to add?
Well, freedom of expression, there's a limit to freedom of expression, especially we always like to use this example. You cannot shout fire when there's no fire, because that create a panic. So there's a limitation in terms of what freedom of expression actually encompass. And like what Point mentioned, it's actually a very gray area, especially when you pass powers to the establishment. because like the POFMA, for example, they would not apply to all the offenses. They would just pick and choose, and normally those people who they choose are people who are critics, and then this becomes a problem. I'm more concerned. I'm more in favor in terms of on state policy on privacy. And it goes back to what I mentioned just now in terms of with great powers come great responsibility. If there's because I don't think individuals who just simply choose to communicate with their friends, families, or this like one person kind of disinformation should be subjected to the kind of this should surrender their privacy to the establishment to fight disinformation, because these are people you're not going to target in the first place. Because these are not people who are spreading disinformation. However, those people who have access to a large audience, say 20,000, 10,000, these are people who should be well aware that they are in the position to influence a large group of people, and their identity should be known, because then if really they were spreading fake news, then the authorities or the social media companies could actually take action on that. I'm as a publisher, I'm ready to surrender my identity in order to carry on my work. And for those people who are not ready, then I think they have to actually then work with how much of influence they can effect. So let's say 500 people, then okay, you can keep your privacy. But if you are running a Telegram group that is reaching out to 5,000 or then this person should be known who this person is. So in order, let's say if this person is well known for spreading fake news, so then you're mentioning one account, right? That was doing this Telegram and posting on Facebook page. So this person should have been brought out and say, okay, why are you doing this? But the current policy is that most of these people will be kept anonymous until the government authorities decide to take action, which really sometimes you might be too late, because the population will have a certain belief on a matter or set their mind to it. So no amount of correction can change their mindset, and that will be a sad thing. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. Thank you all the speakers. Thank you all the participants that have stayed with us until the last minute. We'll follow up with this. And yeah, see you in our next event, which is actually next week. So thank you so much for coming, and I hope that you enjoy this event. Please stay safe because COVID-19 is still around. Bye for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
great week.
Thank you, Ploy. Bye.
Bye,
Bye,
Ajay.
Terry.
Right.